So the attacks by Hamas on Israeli citizens and the subsequent retaliation in Gaza isn't just affecting people there. Jewish people here in the UK are also feeling the repercussions.
The conflict have brought fears and, in fact, a rise in anti-Semitism, with the Metropolitan Police in London offering reassurance to Jewish communities. Rob Rinder has seen what's happening firsthand, and his own mum is feeling vulnerable now here in the UK.
I'm so proud of being British and Jewish, but for the first time, I can honestly say I feel vulnerable, very vulnerable, and scared. Every synagogue in the UK has security. You know,
I hate the fact that it's a normal sight to see security outside of a school. And in the last few days, the security has been upped everywhere. Kids at schools have been told not to wear any form of uniform that identifies their religion, identifies them to be Jewish.
These people don't speak on behalf of Palestinians. It's a terror organisation. Palestinians know that. They are victims of Hamas, just as the thousands of Jews have been victims in this moment. And I wonder, how do people show their support? How do they support the Jewish community? People are asking, what can they do?
It's not complicated, really. It's just to stand up and say, I stand against terrorism. Educate yourself and care about it, because this is now personal for us.
Well, Rob joins us now. Morning to you, Rob.
Morning.
We can see how, well, I wish it wasn't in these circumstances. We can see how personally emotional it is for you, and to hear your mum say that, you know, despite her pride of being British, she suddenly feels vulnerable being here.
It's personal for me, but it should be personal for every person, whoever you are, up and down the country. This is, you know, my mum sitting there saying she feels unsafe. That's less than 270,000 Jews in this country. And my nephew, kids as young as 7, are going to school today, and they do so under risk. There's a chance that they're going to not come home. Sending your kids to school shouldn't be an act of courage. That's the lived experience of Jewish kids just going to school, of shop owners in London and in other cities. And we've got a lived memory of that, of what that means not to be safe because of your religion, because of being Jewish. And it's worth remembering that when you think about how you're going to respond today. And I also want to be mindful of this because it's so painful to watch. I was at a vigil outside Downing Street. What happened at that vigil was that there was no chanting, no happiness. There was prayer for peace for every single human life that has value. Be mindful of that, is what I'd say, before you post, before you think about responding, before you're thinking about the whataboutery. Whatever happens in the Middle East should have no impact on the safety of our communities. And it's your job, whoever you are, to stand alongside us, because we need you now more than ever. I'm sure you've got questions. I have to say I'm really nervous, which is unusual, being here this morning to speak on behalf of the Jewish community. But you'll be aware that I spent many years, alongside lots of others, trying to hold the Israeli government to account. Not just that, but trying to be a bridge for peace in order for us all as human beings to be able to hear one another, to share in our pain and to build from that. The last few days have made that really difficult, not least because, you know, I have friends, many people do, relatives in Israel, but kids I know who were down at that party in southern Israel. And a number of them, example of 2, there was a couple who wanted to get married. They just happened to be 2 women. It was a place where it was free that they could do that in the state of Israel. And they're no longer with us, they're dead. And the thing about both of them is that they invested all of their lives trying to bring peace. The people who were at that party were activists, were above all else experiencing what it could be to live in Israel under freedom and the rule of law. having the right to be gay, having the right to be free. And the essential thing is that Hamas does not speak on behalf of the Palestinian people. And it's painful, I suspect, for you sitting there looking into that autocue, calling these people militants, knowing what's going to ensue, knowing where they're planting their rockets, and knowing the horror that's going to be brought.
Well, we
to
very
innocent
clearly
civilians.
call them terrorists. I mean, you know, it was an act of terror, what happened, and it was a barbaric atrocity. And I had no... I mean, you and I have been in contact, obviously, since what happened. I didn't know that you had lost 2 friends in that attack. And so, obviously, there's, you know, on every level, this is painful for you. I know that. And I think one of the things that is frightening, as you have clearly articulated, is this sense now that this is here in your home, members of your family, your mum saying... I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like if my mum said to me, I feel vulnerable and scared living here, and you have children in your family, and some children are being told to go to school without carrying their bags, which would have their identity marked on it, or their blazers without that. What is the fear, Rob? What does your mum fear? What do you think is the backlash going to be?
Just to be clear, I would throw it back to you, Susanna, if we were talking and ask, well, what would you want if your mum said that? If you were sending your kids to school and they were being told, don't show any outward signs of being Jewish because...
I mean, it's like being in 1930s Germany, that there's an identifier that marks you out and makes you vulnerable. But
vulnerable to murder, vulnerable to violence.
Yeah.
I know kids, these are anecdotal, people are scared of sharing the stuff online. We're on WhatsApp groups where people have been told their kids have gone to school and been punched, where young people shouting, Free Palestine. Many people sharing whatever that sentiment is, that's by the by, but it's said and targeted not because they're making a political point, but because it's anti-Semitism. In other words, and this is the lived experience, reality for Jews who no longer feel safe, no longer feel a sense of solidarity. You know, my grandfather came here, as you know, and I've talked about a lot, as a survivor, because he loved democracy and freedom under the rule of law. He felt safe here, in other words, felt sure that when the time came, the community would stand alongside, shoulder to shoulder with the Jewish community. Instead, what's happening now, despite the horrors of what's going to ensue, is that people are going online, people are engaging in whataboutery. This is not a time for whataboutery. This is a time for solidarity. You know,
when you use the word whataboutery, you're referring to people who say, what about what Israel does to the people, for instance, of Gaza?
There's time for that. There's time for discussions about what may happen. What I'll be clear about is that every Jewish person that I know, that I tolerate in my friendship group, and anyone that I've ever heard in my life, is praying for peace and for the safety of every single human life, regardless of whether they're Palestinian or Israel. And I remind us, nobody's dancing in the streets at the death of anybody. What we're doing is mourning the loss of thousands of men, women, children, babies brutally killed, Holocaust survivors, having been, as you know, kidnapped. That's where we are at the moment. And what happens there is now playing out in our streets where we're no longer safe. And it's worth thinking about what you can do. As I say, before you post online, are you really protecting, are you standing alongside the Jewish community, or are instead you making it less safe for each and every one of us? And there'll be a time, and you'll be aware of this, because they're coming for us. I know that because, as I've said, these are young people that are taking off anything that visibly shows they're Jewish. And we know our history. And if we forget our past, we're doomed to repeat it. But first they come for the Jews. And the question is, who'll be there for you? And that really matters, you know. It takes a lot of courage to stand up here. And my hero, you know, Maya Angelou, and I say this a lot, says you can't practice any of your virtues, be a good person, consistently without courage. And it's essential that you do everything you can to show solidarity. And what I mean by that is reach out to your Jewish friends, educate yourself before you're minded, not just to have an opinion, but to understand that how you express whatever you want to freely express has an impact here on the streets. And the reality of the situation is that that impact has made not just my mum, but the less than 1% of this tiny Jewish community that loves being British not just feel unsafe, it's more than that. The reality is that many of us feel that this great nation of ours that we love so passionately is no longer safe for us. Ask that question before you think about how to respond here.
Yeah.
Rob, there's a... Sorry, what I'm saying.
Well,
I've lost a lot of, these activist friends, and what I'm struggling with at the moment, and many people are out there, and perhaps it's a different thought. Forgive me. No, it's difficult with time. We want to be hopeful.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're looking for all of that light in the darkness.
And where do you find that?
I'm struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I can see, and everyone watching can see that.
When those young people, as I say, that were doing everything, just as we would here, to campaign for freedom, for light, for change, reaching out to Palestinians, knowing what's going to ensue. That's enormously hard, to say the very least. So many of them could have been your children. They are your children.
They are people
that love. They are people that love freedom. And you know this, as Martin Luther King said. In the end, we don't remember the words of our enemies. Everybody, we remember. So we don't remember the words of our enemies. We remember the silence of our friends. Be a friend. Be a friend to peace and be a friend to the Jewish people.
Rob, thank you for coming in this morning. Lots of people getting in touch already and sending huge love to you and your community, and hopefully you will feel that support and them standing with you as well, as we do.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. And thanks to your viewers. I love this place, and I know how mindful they all are. Thank you.
Love to Mum.
Will do.
Please, thank you, Rob. Take care of yourself.